Welcome to Revenge by Eve. Settle in and enjoy today's story.
I was standing in my kitchen reading a love letter my husband had written, except it wasn't addressed to me, and the handwriting matched perfectly with the anniversary card he'd given me just 3 days earlier. Before this story goes any further, tell me, would you have confronted him that instant, or done what I did? And as you listen, comment where you're listening from. I read everyone. My name is Eve Palmer, and for 8 years I believed I was living the dream marriage. I met Daniel when I was 27, working as an event coordinator for a boutique hotel in Charleston. He was 31, a financial advisor with a firm downtown, and he'd come in to arrange a client appreciation dinner. He was polite, detail-oriented, and had this disarming smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. And we went on our first date a week after that event, dinner at a seafood place on the waterfront where we talked until the staff started stacking chairs around us. He asked thoughtful questions about my work, my family, my dreams. He listened in a way that felt rare, not just waiting for his turn to talk, but actually absorbing what I said. Daniel's background was different from mine. He came from old money, not obscenely wealthy, but comfortable in that generational way where he'd never worried about student loans or whether he could afford to go out to dinner. His parents, Richard and Catherine, lived in a restored plantation home about 40 minutes outside the city. My family was solidly middle class. My dad was a public school teacher, my mom worked as a dental hygienist. They'd scrimped and saved to send me and my sister to college, and I'd worked my way through, taking every shift I could get. Daniel never made me feel less than because of that difference. In fact, he seemed to appreciate that I understood the value of work, of earning what you had. We got engaged after dating for 2 years. He proposed on a weekend trip to Savannah in one of those beautiful historic squares under the Spanish moss. It was perfect, romantic, exactly what I'd dreamed of. We married 6 months later in a ceremony at his family's estate. It was elegant, 200 guests, live band, dinner catered by one of the best restaurants in Charleston. My parents were overwhelmed by the scale of it, but Catherine assured them that this was simply how things were done in their family. Daniel and I bought a house in a historic neighborhood, a beautiful 3-bedroom with original hardwood floors and a garden out back. I'd spend Saturday mornings at the farmer's market picking up flowers for the dining room table. Sunday afternoons, Daniel and I would sit on the porch swing with coffee and the newspaper. He'd leave for work around 7, kiss me goodbye, tell me he loved me. I'd head to the hotel around 9. We'd text throughout the day, little check-ins, inside jokes, plans for dinner. Our routine was comfortable. Wednesday nights were date nights. We'd try new restaurants or revisit old favourites. Friday evenings we'd have dinner with his parents, a standing engagement that Catherine insisted on. Sundays were for us, brunch, errands, lazy afternoons. I thought we were happy. I thought we'd built something real. Daniel was attentive in ways that mattered. When I got promoted to senior event coordinator, he took me out to celebrate and told everyone we knew how proud he was. When my father had a health scare, Daniel drove me to the hospital at 2 a.m. and sat with me in the waiting room for 6 hours. We talked about children. Not yet, we'd say. Maybe in a few years, once we'd saved more, once we'd travelled. We had a list of places we wanted to visit. Italy, Greece, New Zealand. Our sex life was good. Regular, comfortable, intimate in the way long-term couples are when they know each other's bodies and preferences. I trusted him completely. The kind of trust that doesn't even register as trust because it's just the foundation of everything. Looking back now, I can see that I confused comfort with happiness, that I mistook routine for security. But at the time, I genuinely believed we had what everyone wanted. The first warning sign came about 14 months ago, subtle enough that I almost missed it. Daniel started working later. Not every night, but 3 or 4 evenings a week he'd text around 5 saying he had to stay for a client meeting or finish up some urgent paperwork. "Don't wait on dinner," he'd say. "I'll grab something on the way home." I understood. His job was demanding, especially during tax season and end-of-quarter crunches. I'd been through busy seasons at the hotel where I'd worked 70-hour weeks without coming up for air. But then I noticed he was dressing differently. New suits, more expensive than his usual. Designer ties. A new cologne that was spicier, more aggressive than what he typically wore. "You look sharp," I said one morning. "Thanks. Figured it was time to upgrade. Clients notice these things." Made sense. First impressions mattered in his industry. He started going to the gym more frequently. Daniel had always been in decent shape, but suddenly he was going 5 mornings a week at 5:30 a.m., sometimes staying for an hour and a half. His body changed, more defined, leaner. "You look amazing," I told him. "Feeling good. Getting older means you have to work harder to stay fit." He was 39, hardly old, but I took him at his word. Then came the phone changes. Daniel had never been secretive with his phone. It would sit on the kitchen counter while he showered, on the nightstand while he slept. If it rang while he was busy, he'd ask me to check who was calling. But he changed his passcode. Started carrying his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. Would take calls in his car or step outside if it rang while we were home. "Who was that?" I asked once after he'd spent 15 minutes on the porch. "Client. Having a panic about the market volatility." Reasonable. The market had been unstable. Our Wednesday date night started getting cancelled. "Babe, I'm so sorry, but this client dinner ran late and I'm exhausted." "No problem. We'll reschedule." But we didn't reschedule. Not that week or the next. Before long, 3 months had passed since we'd had a proper date night. Sunday mornings changed too. Daniel started sleeping later, claiming he was exhausted from the work week. When he did wake up, he'd spend an hour on his phone before finally joining me for coffee. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine." "In just work emails?" "Always work." Everything was always work. Our sex life became sporadic. Once every 2 weeks, then once a month. When I'd try to initiate, he'd claim he was too tired, too stressed. "Is something wrong? With us, I mean?" "No, Eve. I'm just under a lot of pressure right now. It's not about you." But it felt like it was about me. It felt like I'd done something wrong, failed somehow, without knowing what or how. I started questioning everything. Was I not attractive enough anymore? Had I gained weight without noticing? Was I boring? Too focused on work? I tried harder, made his favourite dinners, wore lingerie to bed, planned weekend getaways. He'd smile, thank me, but something was missing. That spark, that genuine enthusiasm, it was gone. The escalation happened gradually over the next several months. And Daniel became critical in small ways. He'd comment that dinner was a bit salty or that I'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning again, even though I'd never agreed to pick it up in the first place. He'd compare me to other women, always framed as casual observations. "Sarah's really dedicated to her fitness routine. She runs every morning before work. Rebecca just got promoted to VP. Pretty impressive for someone her age." Never directly saying I was lacking, but the implication was there. Friday dinners at his parents' house became tense. Catherine would make pointed comments about our lack of children. "You're not getting any younger, Eve. If you're planning to have a family, time is of the essence." Daniel would just sit there not defending me, not changing the subject. Sometimes he'd even nod in agreement. We're not ready yet," I'd say. "Some people are never ready. You just have to take the plunge," Richard would add. I started dreading those dinners, started making excuses to skip them. Daniel would go alone, and when he came home, he'd be distant, quiet. "Your mother's upset I didn't come. Can you blame her? This is important to my family." But what about what was important to me? I tried to talk to my sister Melissa about how I was feeling. "Marriage goes through phases," she said. "Rob and I went through a rough patch in year 6. You just have to push through." But this didn't feel like a phase. It felt like a shift. Like the foundation we'd built was cracking and I was the only one who noticed. I suggested couples therapy. Daniel laughed. "We don't need therapy, Eve. We're fine." "You're overthinking things." "I don't feel fine. That's a you problem, not an us problem." The dismissiveness stung, like my feelings were invalid just because he didn't share them. Around this time, I started noticing financial irregularities. Not huge amounts, but enough to catch my attention. $300 here, $500 there, from our joint account with descriptions like business dinner or client entertainment. Daniel's corporate card should have covered those expenses. "Why are you using our personal account for work stuff?" I asked. "I had to cover a few things. I'll get reimbursed. It's happening a lot." "Are you seriously questioning how I spend money? I make more than you, Eve. I think I've earned the right to spend what I need to." The edge in his voice was new, sharp, mean. I backed off. I didn't want to fight, didn't want to be the nagging wife, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The core betrayal happened on a Tuesday in October. Our anniversary was on Saturday, and Daniel had surprised me with a beautiful card that morning before work. Handwritten message inside. "8 years with you feels like both a lifetime and just the beginning. I love you more than words can say. Forever yours, D." I'd cried reading it. Real tears. Because it felt like maybe we were finding our way back to each other. That afternoon, I was home early from work due to a cancelled event. I was tidying up Daniel's home office, something I rarely did because he liked his space organised his way, and I knocked over a stack of papers on his desk. As I gathered them up, a handwritten note fluttered to the floor. I picked it up and started reading before my brain registered what I was seeing. "My darling Caroline, these past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. Every moment with you feels stolen and precious. I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore, until I can wake up next to you every morning instead of just Thursday nights and stolen weekends. You've reminded me what passion feels like, what it means to truly connect with someone. I'm working on the exit strategy. It's complicated, but I promise we'll be together soon. All my love, D." The handwriting was Daniel's, the same handwriting from my anniversary card. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the letter. Caroline. Thursday nights, the nights he claimed to be working late, stolen weekends, the work conferences he'd attended alone over the past 6 months. An exit strategy. He was planning to leave me, and he'd been planning it while writing me love notes, while lying in our bed, while looking me in the eye and telling me everything was fine. I sat down in his office chair because my legs wouldn't hold me. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. Everything in my peripheral vision went blurry. I read the letter again, and again, looking for some alternative explanation, some way it could mean something other than what it obviously meant. But there was none. I opened Daniel's desk drawer with shaking hands, and I found more letters, dozens of them, printed emails, photos. Caroline was younger, maybe 30, beautiful in that effortless way some women are. Blonde, athletic, smiling in every photo. I found receipts for jewellery I'd never received. For romantic dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. For weekend getaways to beach towns and mountain resorts. I found a second phone, a burner phone, with hundreds of text messages between Daniel and Caroline. Messages where he complained about me. Called me frigid and boring. Said I'd let myself go and stopped trying. That staying married to me was slowly killing his soul. Messages where Caroline sent him explicit photos and he responded with enthusiasm I hadn't seen from him in years. Messages where they discussed their future together. A house in the mountains. Children. Something he'd been telling me for months he wasn't ready for. The most recent message from just yesterday. "Can't wait to see you Thursday. I'll wear that red dress you like. Love you endlessly." Today was Tuesday. He was planning to see her in 2 days. I sat in that office for over an hour, reading everything, absorbing the full scope of the betrayal. This wasn't a recent mistake or a momentary lapse. This was calculated, sustained, deliberate deception. And the worst part? He'd been planning to leave me but wanted to do it on his terms, in his timing, in a way that protected him. The anniversary card, the I love yous, the occasional gestures of affection. All of it was performance, keeping me compliant while he arranged his exit. That was the moment I stopped waiting for them to change. I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. The letters, the photos, the phone, everything. Then I went to our bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront him. Or no, I wasn't going to give him the opportunity to gaslight me or make this my fault. I was going to be strategic. I pulled out my own phone and started documenting. I photographed every letter, every receipt, every message on the burner phone. I uploaded everything to a secure cloud account. Then I called a divorce attorney. Not to file immediately, but to understand my rights. She told me that South Carolina was an at-fault divorce state, that adultery was grounds for divorce and could affect alimony and asset division. Document everything, she said, and don't let him know you know. Not until you're ready. Next, I called a private investigator, a woman named Janet, who specialized in marital infidelity cases. I need complete documentation of my husband's affair. Photos, videos, timeline. We're everything that would hold up in court. When do you need it? Yesterday. But I'll settle for the next 2 weeks. I also started protecting myself financially. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank and began funneling my paychecks there. I gathered important documents, birth certificate, passport, social security card, financial records, and put them in a safe deposit box. I consulted with a financial advisor about our assets and how to protect my share. And through all of this, I continued being the perfect wife. When Daniel came home that night, I smiled and asked about his day. Long, exhausting. I'm glad to be home. I kissed him, served dinner, made small talk about my day at the hotel. He had no idea I'd found everything. No idea his entire world was about to implode. Over the next 2 weeks, and I executed my plan with precision, Janet's investigation confirmed everything. She photographed Daniel and Caroline at restaurants, at her apartment, checking into hotels. She documented every Thursday night rendezvous, every stolen weekend. She also discovered something I hadn't known. Caroline worked at Daniel's firm. She was a junior financial advisor he'd been mentoring. That added another dimension. Not just adultery, but a workplace relationship that violated his firm's ethics policies. I gathered documentation of every penny Daniel had spent on Caroline. Over $40,000 in 6 months. Marital assets used to fund his affair. I also started building my post-divorce life. I looked at apartments, researched jobs in other cities, made plans for what came next. And I waited for the perfect moment. That moment came on November 15th. Our friends, 2 other couples we'd known for years, were throwing a dinner party. 12 people, including Daniel and me. Daniel almost cancelled. I'm not really in the mood for socializing. Come on, it'll be fun. We haven't seen them in months. He reluctantly agreed. At the party, I was charming, funny, the perfect guest. I laughed at jokes, asked thoughtful questions, helped the hostess in the kitchen. Daniel seemed confused by my good mood. He'd been expecting me to be sullen or needy, I think. My happiness threw him off. After dinner, when everyone had moved to the living room with drinks, I stood up. I have an announcement to make. The room went quiet. Daniel looked alarmed. Daniel and I are getting divorced. You could have heard a pin drop. Daniel stood up. Eve, what are you? I'm filing for divorce on Monday. I found out about your affair with Caroline 6 weeks ago. I've spent that time documenting everything and protecting myself legally and financially. His face went white. I pulled out a folder I'd brought with me. These are copies of evidence I'll be using in the divorce proceedings. Love letters you wrote to your mistress. Financial records showing you spent over $40,000 of marital money on her. Photos of you together at hotels and restaurants. I handed the folder to our host. I wanted you all to know the truth before Daniel had a chance to spin this as some mutual decision or claim I'm being irrational. Daniel tried to speak. Everyone, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to me for 6 months? That you called me frigid and boring while writing me anniversary cards about eternal love? That you were planning to leave me but wanted to time it so you could protect your assets first? He looked at our friends, desperate for support, but no one would meet his eyes. Eve, please, this is humiliating. Can we talk about this privately? Now you're worried about humiliation. Where was that concern when you were parading your mistress around town? I looked at our friends. I apologize for bringing this to your dinner party, but I wanted you to hear it from me. Daniel's a liar and a cheater, and I'm done protecting his reputation. I grabbed my coat and purse. The apartment lease is in both our names, but I've already moved my things out. My attorney will be in touch about asset division. And I walked out, leaving Daniel to face the people who'd considered him a friend. The consequences for Daniel came quickly and severely. His firm launched an ethics investigation into his relationship with Caroline. Their policy strictly prohibited senior advisors from having romantic relationships with junior staff they supervised. They found that Daniel had given Caroline preferential treatment, better client assignments, promotion recommendations, bonuses she hadn't earned. He was terminated within a week. Caroline was transferred to a different office and given a formal reprimand. Their relationship imploded under the pressure. Turns out building a romance on lies and sneaking around doesn't translate well to real life when you're both unemployed and facing public judgment. She ended it 6 weeks after everything came out. The divorce proceedings were brutal for Daniel. Because I had documented proof of adultery and financial misconduct, the judge ruled in my favor on virtually everything. I got the house, which we sold, and I received 65% of proceeds. I got half of all retirement accounts plus additional compensation for the $40,000 he'd spent on Caroline. I got 3 years of alimony. His parents were devastated. Catherine called me once crying, asking how I could destroy their son's life over one mistake. It wasn't one mistake, I said calmly. It was 6 months of calculated deception. He made his choices. These are just the consequences. Richard tried to threaten me with expensive lawyers, but my attorney shut that down immediately. The evidence was airtight. Some of our mutual friends sided with Daniel, claiming I'd been cruel to expose him publicly. But most didn't. Most had seen Daniel's behavior over the years, the subtle arrogance, the way he dismissed me, the way he'd changed. They'd known something was off. They just hadn't known what. Daniel tried to reach out several times. Apologetic texts, calls I didn't answer. A letter claiming he'd made a terrible mistake and still loved me. I never responded. Because the truth was, the man I'd married, or the man I thought I'd married, had never really existed. He'd been performing a role, the devoted husband, the family man, the successful professional. But underneath it all, he'd been someone else entirely. Someone who could look me in the eye and lie. Who could plan to leave me while accepting my love and trust. That person deserved nothing from me. 4 years later, I'm 41 and living a life I built from scratch. I left Charleston. Too many memories, too many people who knew our story. I moved to Asheville and took a job as director of events for a luxury resort in the mountains. The work is challenging and creative, and I love the autonomy. I bought a small house with a view of the mountains. Every piece of furniture, every decorative choice, every decision is mine and mine alone. I've dated. Nothing serious yet, but I'm not rushing. I'm learning who I am outside of being someone's wife, and that process is slower and messier and more important than I ever realized. I've reconnected with parts of myself I'd let go during my marriage. I took up painting. I hike every weekend. I joined a book club. I travel alone sometimes just to prove to myself I can. I talk to Melissa regularly. She divorced Rob 2 years ago after discovering her own version of my story. We're closer now than we've ever been, bonded by our separate but similar betrayals. I heard through mutual friends that Daniel bounced between jobs for a while before landing at a smaller firm with less prestige and less money. He married Caroline eventually. Apparently they reconnected after a year apart, but it didn't last. They divorced after 18 months. Last I heard, he was dating someone new, someone young, someone he could mold and control and eventually discard when he got bored. The pattern repeating itself. I don't feel triumphant about his struggles. I don't feel anything toward him at all, which is its own kind of freedom. The betrayal broke me for a while. That moment in his office when I realized the entire foundation of my marriage was a lie. That changed something fundamental about how I saw the world. But it also taught me something crucial. I could survive anything. I'd built my entire adult life around being Daniel's wife. And when that fell apart, I thought I'd fall apart too. But I didn't. I learned that I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. That I could strategize and execute and protect myself when I needed to. That I didn't need someone else to make me whole. The marriage was a lie, but my exit wasn't. It was deliberate, strategic, and exactly what I needed to reclaim my life. And that's a truth no one can take from me. If you were in my place, what would you have done differently? And don't forget to tell me, where are you listening from right now? This is Revenge by Eve, and your voice matters here.
Thanks for watching Revenge by Eve. We hoped you enjoyed the story. See you soon.